So welcome everyone to the second interview in my two-part series on how COVID-19 has affected, or still is affecting, the real estate industry. We're covering off on the sales side of things today, and my guest is a very good friend of mine, Michael Lillywhite. Michael and I worked together in real estate sales many years ago. Whilst my career was very short-lived, which is probably best for all concerned, Michael's been in the industry for a good 20 years now, very knowledgeable on both sides of the ledger in buying and selling real estate, and a really great resource for us today to get some ideas or thoughts on what has been happening to the sales market as a result of COVID-19, and some insights on where to go from here. So, Michael, perhaps you could give us the sort of very brief bio on your career, mate, and where you're up to at the moment.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Simon.
No worries.
It's doesn't time go quick? Unbelievable.
20 years,
20 years, and it feels like yesterday. Obviously, been in the game for a long time. Worked for a multitude of well-renowned companies, mainly in Victoria, through the west, in the inner city as well. And throughout that journey, I've run my own real estate businesses. I've been sort of early adopters for disruptors that have come from overseas, more online based, which is quite interesting to find where we're at now with COVID. So sort of ahead of the game there to a certain respect. So so still enjoying what I do, and here we are.
Cool. So maybe talk us through the evolution of the pandemic in terms of its effects on the market. In fact, it seems so long ago, I can't even remember what the sort of state of the market was just prior to the beginning of COVID. Can you remember what was going on?
Yeah, definitely. It was interesting because we were getting some real traction after the election, a bit slower before the election, so started to gain some real momentum. And then COVID hit us really quickly, and no one saw it coming, and it came to a halt pretty quickly in April. One of the slowest months I can recall in real estate, and that's not just for myself. I've been speaking to a lot of renowned colleagues, and everyone was saying a similar thing, that April everything just stopped to a halt.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the fact that you couldn't conduct inspections or auctions, that was the big impact, I guess, at the start.
It certainly was.
And then how did that sort of flow on into the metrics like, days on market and price ultimately?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because days on market haven't really been affected because there is a stock issue out there. There's currently really low stock. So days on market, I expect that will change as we see the tail end of COVID later this year. A number of factors that we may touch on a bit later. So no, days on market's still good. Clearance rates are still high, but again, it comes back to that shortage of stock that we're currently seeing.
Sure. So I guess, was it kind of, everything was put on hold when COVID really hit, and so not only were there not many people going out there to try and buy properties, but vendors immediately who were thinking about putting their property in the market just went.
Absolutely, 100% correct. It was a real holding pattern. Buyers were certainly very nervous, and so were sellers. And it sort of makes sense where, if sellers are thinking that they actually can't have inspections, which we actually had for a weekend there back in April, you literally couldn't take anyone through. I think as that's eased, and obviously now we're in the situation where we can conduct opens and have up to 20 people come through. Obviously social distancing, of course, to be adhered to, and auctions as well. I think there's a bit more confidence coming back into the market, and sellers and buyers are noticing that.
So you sort of mentioned that days on market hasn't been impacted that much, but what about, like, looking backwards over the last couple of months, what happened to prices? Did they change?
Yeah, well, you're talking about after, as COVID's come in? Yeah, look, it's been minimal, 3.4% over the last quarter.
Okay.
So that may surprise you.
3.4% drop.
Yeah, so a drop. So I mean, a lot of people out there, and the banks are predicting massive drops. That we might still face that, but as we sit right now, there's been minimal shift in the market at that 3.4%.
It's amazing, isn't it? And I guess that leads into ultimately what sort of buyers and sellers would like to know. And I know you don't have a crystal ball.
No, I wish I did.
But how do you think we're going to track from here?
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because when you look at the ecosystem of where things are going to be potentially later this year, coming into the spring market, where there's going to be a lot more properties, I believe, on the market. Some of the factors that lead me to believe that, obviously, the banks can only hold off mortgages for so long.
Sure.
Unemployment's going to be a concern, with predictions over 11%. You've got immigration issues at the moment where that's down by 85%. So all these factors coming in, and I think there'll be some forced sales that need to take place. So if you want to, I'm thinking if you wanted to sell, you'd be thinking to do it in the next 2 to 3 months.
Right.
So you're selling in isolation as opposed to competition.
Right. Okay, I see what you mean. So there's, as you say, financial pressure being applied to a lot more owners. Then they're going to have to sell.
They're going to have to sell.
Not really a choice thing.
Correct. There's going to be more choice out there.
And obviously, as we always allude to, that it's a game of supply and demand.
Correct.
If there's, the market gets flooded with properties, all of a sudden
more choice for buyers, and it will drive prices down.
Yeah.
It just remains to be seen how much it's going to come down.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, and one
nobody can answer. I wish I could, but
really
that's a difficult one. But I think what was it? The Commonwealth Bank are predicting, the worst case 32%. I think that's an extreme, but let's hope that doesn't take place.
Absolutely. So I guess if you're in the position of being a prospective vendor at the moment,
there's a real sense of urgency about it, Simon. That's how I'm talking to my clients.
Yeah.
I spoke to one this morning, and she really wanted a bit of a snapshot on the market, separation, and she was after my guidance, and the answer was, look, you either look at selling in the next 2 to 3 months and get it on as quickly as possible,
sure,
or you look to keep it as an investment because you couldn't afford to actually buy the X out. But that most likely is going to be a 3 to 5 year proposition if you want to see any substantial growth.
Yeah, right.
And she agreed, and she would come into the market.
And so on the flip side, because I know that you've worked with buyers in the past as well.
Yep.
I mean, obviously that means that it's probably going to be some good opportunities coming up over
Absolutely, and there's still some good opportunities. I mean, all markets vary. And I always say to buyers that are actively looking, well, if you've got the medium to long term view, it's always a good time to buy. And you just got to, and sometimes even engaging a buyer's agent in this market could be an opportunity as well.
Sure.
You don't have to go out and compete with sort of 10 to 20 people with social distancing. Go to an expert, let them do it for you, and obviously they have access to off-market opportunities and on-market opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it might be worth actually looking into an advocate.
Sounds like good advice to me. Well, thank you for your time today, Michael. That's,
appreciate it.
Some really good insight there to hopefully help our viewers into how to navigate these interesting times once again in real estate world brought on by COVID-19. So thanks to all my viewers today for tuning in. Remember to please follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn, and we'll be back with some different topics in the future.